Chapter 9 is all about polynomials. So the first thing we're going to review is how to add two polynomials together. So we have 9x plus 6x cubed minus 8x squared plus negative 5x cubed plus 6x. When we add polynomials, we want to make sure that we combine like terms. So you'll notice that we have a 6x cubed and a negative 5x cubed. Those are like terms, and so we can add those together, and that will give us just a 1x cubed, or an x cubed. We also notice that we have a negative 8x squared, but there's no other like term to combine him with. So we'll just write him down as negative 8x squared. Then we also have a 9x and a 6x, and we can combine those to 15x. So our final answer is x cubed minus 8x squared plus 15x. The second one works the same way. We have a 7a cubed and an a cubed, and so that will be really a 7 plus a 1, which is 8a cubed. There's no one to combine the negative 4a squared with, so we'll just write him down. And there's also no one to combine the negative 2a with. We can combine 1 with a negative 1, which gives us a 0. So we don't need to put a plus 0 on the back. So our final answer is 8a cubed minus 4a squared minus 2a. If we want to multiply polynomials together, we need to remember to FOIL. So FOIL means first, outer, inner, last. So for number 3, we need to multiply 2x times 2x, which gives us a 4x squared. 2x times negative 4 is negative 8x. 1 times 2x is 2x. And 1 times negative 4 is negative 4. We see that the two terms in the middle are like terms, negative 8x and 2x. So we can combine those together. So our final answer is 4x squared minus 6x minus 4. For number 4, we want to do the same thing. We want to FOIL, first, outer, inner, last. So x times x is x squared. X times 7 is 7x. Negative 3 times x is negative 3x. And negative 3 times 7 is negative 21. So our final answer is x squared plus 4x minus 21. For number 5, we also want to FOIL. So we'll get 6c times 6c, which is 36c squared. 6c times negative 2 will be negative 12c. 2 times 6c is positive 12c. And 2 times negative 2 is minus 4. So we see that we have a negative 12c and a positive 12c, and those are just going to cancel out. So our final answer is 36c squared minus 4. For number 6, we have the quantity 4x squared minus 3 squared. Whenever you see a quantity squared, you need to remember to write it twice in FOIL. So we're going to rewrite this as 4x squared minus 3 times 4x squared minus 3. And we're going to FOIL. So first, 4x squared times 4x squared is 16x squared. 4x squared times negative 3 is negative 12x squared. Uh-oh, I made a mistake. Should be 16x to the 4th, because we need to add our exponents. And then negative 3 times 4x squared is negative 12x squared. And negative 3 times negative 3 is a positive 9. And then we need to combine the like terms in the middle. So we have 16x to the 4th minus 24x squared plus 9. Next, we're going to review factoring. So for number 7, we want to factor 16x squared minus 4. So we want to recognize that this is a difference of squares because 16 is a square and so is 4. And to factor difference of squares, we take the square root of both. So the square root of 16 is 4, so we're going to have a 4x and a 4x. And the square root of 4 is 2, so we have a 2 and a 2. And since it's difference of squares, we want 1 plus and 1 minus. So the answer is 4x plus 2 times 4x minus 2. For number 8, we have x squared plus 7x plus 10. Since this one has 3 terms, we want to factor using the big X. So we need to think of 2 numbers that add to 7 but multiply to 10. So 2 numbers that multiply to 10 are 5 and 2. And those 2 numbers add to 7. So we make our 2 sets of parentheses, and we put an x first in both of them, and then we have a plus 5 and a plus 2. If you wrote the answer as x plus 2 times x plus 5, that would also be correct. Now we want to solve the equation by factoring. And so if we look at the first one, number 9, we have x cubed plus 2x squared minus 9x minus 18. Since we have 4 terms, we need to factor this polynomial by grouping. So first we take our first 2 terms and we group them together, and we think to ourselves, what goes into both x cubed plus 2x squared, or what can I pull out of it? Since both of these terms have an x, we want to pull out an x squared, since x to the second is the smallest one. And then write down a set of parentheses and see what we have left over. So x squared goes into x cubed once. So we have an x left. And then if I take an x squared out of 2x squared, I have a 2 left over. Now we want to do the same thing for our next 2. And we want to include the negative. So we have negative 9x minus 18. So if we look at this, we can take out a negative 9, and then we're left with an x plus 2. You know if you did factor by grouping correctly if these 2 factors are the same. So now what we do is we take the 2 factors that are on the outside, which is x squared and minus 9, and we write them together. And then we take the 2 factors that are on the outside, x plus 2, and we write it once. Now we need to ask ourselves, can I factor more? And the answer is yes, because we have x squared minus 9, which is a difference of squares. And x squared minus 9 is going to factor into x plus 3, x minus 3, and we still have the x plus 2. So since this is asking us to solve, we need to take each factor and set it equal to 0 and then solve. So we have x plus 3 equals 0, x minus 3 equals 0, and x plus 2 equals 0. So our final answers are going to be x equals negative 3, x equals positive 3, and x equals negative 2. For number 10, we have 25z squared plus 60z plus 36 equals 0. So if we're going to factor this, we need to use the smiley face method since we have a coefficient in front of the z squared. So I'm going to make 2 sets of parentheses, and I'm going to think to myself, what are 2 numbers that multiply to 25? And that is a 5 and a 5. And they both need z's since we have z squared. Then I need to think of 2 numbers that multiply to 36, and that is 6 and 6. Now I'm going to check and see if I factored this correctly by doing the smiley face. So 6 times 5 is 30, and 5 times 6 is 30, and this both adds up to 60. So I know that I factored it correctly with 5z plus 6 and 5z plus 6. So now I'm going to take both of my factors and set them equal to 0 and solve. So I have 5z equals negative 6, and after I divide by 5, I have z equals negative 6 over 5. Since this equation is the exact same, I know that I'm only going to get one answer, and it's z equals negative 6 over 5. For number 11, we also need to factor using the smiley face method since there is a coefficient in front of the b squared. So again, we want to make our parentheses, and we'll need a 3. Let me erase that line. We'll need a 3b and a regular b. And then we need to think of two numbers that add to 7, and that is 7 and 1. Now let's use the smiley face method to check. So this gives me a 7b, and this gives me a 3b. Uh-oh, that only gives me a 10b, and I want a 22b in the middle. So I'm going to switch the 7 and the 1 around and see if that will help. So if I multiply 1 and b together, that gives me a 1b. And the 3 and 7 give me a 21b. So if I add those together, that's better. That's 22b. That's what I was looking for. So I have 3b plus 1 times b plus 7. And now I need to take each factor and set it equal to 0. So I'm going to get b equals negative 7. And b equals negative 1/3. Number 12 asks what is the degree of the polynomial, and we need to remember that the degree of the polynomial is the polynomial's highest exponent. So the highest exponent is 3, so this polynomial has a degree of 3. For number 13, we have a rectangular swimming pool with a length that is 5 times its width. So let's draw a picture of that. So here's our rectangular swimming pool. The length is 5 times the width, so if the width is x, the length must be 5x. Then it says it's going to be expanded on both sides by 4 yards. So that means we need to add 4 yards to both sides. Write an expression that models the area of the expanded pool. So, to find the area, we need to multiply the length and the width together. So that will be 5x plus 4 times x plus 4. And then all we need to do is FOIL it, and that will be our final expression. So 5x times x is 5x squared. 5x times 4 is 20x. 4 times x is 4x. And 4 times 4 is 16. So our final expression is 5x squared plus 24x plus 16. For number 14, it says, what are the x-intercepts for the graph 3x minus 2 and x plus 5? The x-intercepts are the same as if we took each piece and set it equal to 0. So our x-intercepts will be 2/3 and -5. For the last problem, we need to write the polynomial in order. So that'll be 3z to the 4th plus 2z cubed minus z squared plus 5z.